So we are here with Jeremy Wagner of Broken Hope, sitting at Dunkin' Donuts, having some tea, having some coffee, right? And we want to talk about the history of the band, 30 years.
Yes.
So Jeremy, how did you first get interested in the music?
So when I was growing up in the far north suburbs of Chicago, in the Gurnee area where I went to high school, by junior and senior year, I was already a guitar player for some time, for at least a couple years. So I always had wanted to be a metal guitar player. And when I started, my tastes were like Metallica, Ride the Lightning. That really inspired me to be a metal guitar player. And also so did Master of Puppets, and then Slayer, Rain and Blood really just took me away. Hell Awaits too had a big influence on me, but right by the time '86 rolled around, I'm like, yeah, this is what I really want to do. So fast forward a couple years, I'm in high school in Gurnee, Illinois, and I'm going to school with our original vocalist, Joe Thiachek, and we knew a drummer from Antioch, Illinois, and that was Ryan Stanek, and the three of us formed Broken Hope in 1988. So as I'm doing this interview, that's 30 years ago this year, 2018. So I've been doing it a long time. And, typical just garage band, jamming at parents' houses, basements, everything, and trying to make original music. And that's what we did. We did our first demo, and then a second demo, and then we got signed. And when we got signed, is it okay if I show
Yeah,
this?
of course, that's why.
We did this album, Swamped and Gore. This is the actual
On
original
Grindcore Records.
CD, yeah. There's Grindcore logo.
Yep.
And this was out for about a year, and then Metal Blade Records swooped in and picked up Broken Hope and re-released this with a new cover. But I'm really surprised. I got to show this artifact that Mark Kadzielawa brought. This is a toe tag like you'd put on a cadaver. And this was a promo toe tag that the record label Grindcore International made for us. So another casualty of Broken Hope, toe tag, tag on deceased. And then back then you would, if you wanted to be on a mailing list, you'd fill this out and send it in and be on the mailing list. But these I think were too friggin' cool to mail in. I know I kept a few somewhere, so.
How did that album do when it came out?
Did real well. It went in, the first pressing was like 5,000 copies and it sold out. They went into a second pressing, another 5,000 and sold out. And I think that was before SoundScan too and everything. So it did really well for like an independent small label and a death metal band like Broken Hope. I credit a lot of the interest in that debut and selling so well is because of the underground. You know, I was tape trading Broken Hope demos for a good while, like hammering the shit out of it. So when I got, signed and stuff, we mailed everybody, hey, we got this album coming out, and I think that's why part of the reason it did good and stuff. So yeah.
It got you signed to Metal Blade.
It did.
I mean,
Plus
Grindcore was only a local label out of Chicago that,
right. Yeah, exactly. So, and we did, we got our first tours and first real big like festival appearances out of that first album. So all of that helped as well, to bring up visibility. So I remember you and me, Mark, at Michigan Death Fest.
Yes.
Hanging with you. I have a picture like I think I'm choking you in a picture like Alice Cooper choking people,
I got a lot of those.
I know I got that, and like you and me hanging with the great Sophie Diamantis. Remember her? She's at Roadrunner Records.
Absolutely.
I think she's a baker now or something.
Yeah, she's
I'm friends with her on Facebook.
Same here.
So hi, Sophie.
Same here.
We didn't forget you.
Yep.
And so Michigan Death Fest.
Oh, there were a lot of things. Fotches,
Milwaukee,
locally.
and oh my God, Fotches kind of is where we really, got our teeth stuck into, doing shows. What was great about Fotches, we were a demo band, but they always wanted bands on Sundays, and we got in good with that guy Heavy Eddie, that promoter, and he was booking us every other Sunday, and we had a number of shows that we were really like thrilled about at Foch's. Like we opened for Repulsion and Deceased, and then we opened for Obituary when they played Foch's, dude. That was like my favorite band. And I just thought, man, this is friggin' awesome, you know, like, you know, you worship these bands and then you open for them, and you know, you're a teenager, and it was awesome. So Foch's, yeah, that was a good start for us in the demo days, big time. And you're right, that's where we, again, cut our teeth, was places like Foch's, and we do stuff over the state line in Wisconsin, you know, and stuff too when we could, yeah.
And you know, all of this hard work eventually paid off because your second album really marked a big step forward. You want to show the record and get into it?
Yeah, so the second album, Balls of Repugnance, was our first official album for Metal Blade. You know, they re-released Swamped in Gore, but this was our first one where we were doing a real album for Metal Blade, and it was this album came out in 1993, and I remember writing the majority of this album on guitar in the lyrics in a attic apartment that I shared with Brian Griffin, our old lead guitar player in Zion, Illinois, and that was a time where I was like, I always tell the story when I was writing that music, I was really pissed off. I had barely any money. I was living in this attic apartment with no AC, and it was hotter than hell, and I had girlfriend troubles, you name it, everything. And I'm like 22, 23 years old, and I was just pissed off. And man, all that anger and shit made for a real, I think, extreme and intense album. This is one of my favorite albums in our discography, and when this came out, I felt there was a step up after Swamped in Gore, and this album opened a lot of doors for us. We were touring a lot more, and we did a really kick-ass tour with Unleashed, and that was like 1994 after the album came out, and we just stuck to the road and just kept going forward.
It was a great album. It really kind of made your first album sound like a demo in comparison.
Yeah, thank you. That's
how I got it.
Yeah. There's there was a quote from Stefan Shirazi, the journalist. He gave us this great quote, and we used it. Metal Blade used it when they did ads, and it was like something like merciless, unrelenting, death metal. That's whatever.
I remember covering this album for Pit magazine back then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the good old Pit magazine. Yes. Some people have referred to Bowels to this day, like journalists and fans, like I've heard, it's like our Rain and Blood of our discography, just because it's relentless from beginning to end, doesn't let up, and just and it's short.
Do you still find yourself playing a lot of the songs in your live set?
Yes, off this album. Yeah, absolutely. And the show we're doing tonight, as we do this interview, is like celebrating 30 years of Broken Hope. We formed in 1988. It's 2018. So we thought it'd be cool to cover songs from all the discography. So I'm looking at the liner notes here, and there's probably four tunes on here that we're playing. We always switch the setup when we do fests and tours, but there's times we played like half the album live, So tracks on the Balls of Repugnance are a staple for sure.
Well, It didn't stop there.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Then, so Repulsive Conception came out, and this album, a lot of fond memories of this album too. It was the first album. Oh, I should retrace my steps. The first two albums were done digitally. and we were the first digital death metal band, according to Wikipedia. And when we did this album, we did the first two albums we did were at a studio in Gurnee called Wave Digital, and that album, those two albums, were done with Brian Griffin, our lead guitar player. He was our producer too for the band. So he was working at Wave Digital Studios in Gurnee, Illinois, and we did these on digital tape, and it was really cool. I thought the production was great. But when we got to this album, Brian Griffin had his own recording studio then. So I think it was called Qualitone Studios. And that was done in analog. So this was our first real analog album. I love the production. And this album, we did our first music video for Headbangers Ball. It was for the song Into the Necrosphere. Yep. And just great stuff. That's a band shot of us in Joe Thiacek's basement at his house. We did a photo shoot there. And we did a photo shoot outside too. I don't know if it's in this layout. I don't see it. But we did a photo shoot, and it's on the back of the jewel case.
Okay, yeah.
So we're outside
right.
in snow, and that was so cold. It was like 10 below that day without a wind chill. We froze our asses off. But we did great tours. We did a tour with Deicide. We did the first tour 6 Feet Under ever did when they came out. And,
I remember that at the way on.
We did a bunch of festivals and more touring and great stuff. And then after that, the fourth album, which we don't have the CD case, but that's okay.
Technology is going to help us out.
You see that on the camera?
Look, yep, you got
Loathing.
it. Yes.
And this album, I love that album cover.
It was a big breakthrough as well.
It was. Wes Benscoter did the artwork for that album. Wes also did this album cover, by the way. And this was done by Rob Smits. That re-release of Swamp de Gore was done by this guy, Rob Smits. It was really good. He's a great artist. Wes is a great artist. But anyway, so when Loathing came out, we recorded at that same studio, that Qualitone Studios Brian Griffin had. And that was a big step up, Loathing, as far as musicianship, technicality on some aspects, a bit more maturity on the lyrics that I wrote, and just some of our strongest tracks to this day. Just that album's in a class by itself as far as our discography goes, and had a fun time writing that. And Loathing, that came out in 1997, and we did our first headline tour ever that year, and it was really successful. We thought, wow, we really stepped up, and we're headlining, doing great tours with. We had Monstrosity and Vader, and other bands, other tours we did. So just a lot of fond memories of Loathing, and it still stands the test of time to this day.
You mentioned lyrics. Where's all that brutality coming from? And I mean, you're a well-spoken, intelligent guy, yet the lyrics are extremely brutal.
Right.
I mean, what's going on?
It's like if you met John Carpenter, the film director, or you met Stephen King. I've met both these guys.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge Carpenter fan.
And they're both cool as hell and super nice. And you could ask them the same question, like, why do you write such scary stuff, or why do you make these horror movies that are so terrifying? And the answer that they would probably give, like me, I know Stephen King has been asked that before, because I'm a huge King fan and read probably every interview he's ever done, is like, he just heard of being a horror kid. I'm a big horror fan. I have been since I was like 3 years old. I was always into monsters and horror movies, and then I got into horror novels, and it's just an interest of mine. It's funny. I'm a walking contradiction, because I can't stand getting a paper cut or seeing brutal
Same here.
stuff, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, some stuff freaks me the hell out. So
I almost passed out in my health class in high school. So
oh yeah.
I'm visual.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know
Yeah, visual
exactly.
stuff
I mean,
like that. But I don't know what it is. I have a passion for writing creepy stuff, scary stuff. Some of the stuff I write could definitely be classified as way over the top, very extreme and whatnot. It's just part of my DNA, I guess. I'm a horror kid, a horror fan, and I like writing outlandish, horrifying things. And it's just like someone who maybe is a sports fan. Why do you like sports? You know, it's like just something I enjoy.
if you could name your top 5 horror movies, what would they be?
I did that last year, actually, when I'll show you our new album, Mutilated and Assimilated. We were asked, every band member, for a making of the Mutilated and Assimilated album. What are your top 5 horror movies?
Yep.
And off the top of my head, if this conflicts with what I said last year, there's The Thing. There's The Thing.
Yep.
John Carpenter's The Thing. George Romero's original Day of the Dead. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Jaws for damn sure. And I think, The Exorcist is up there, and then there's a bunch of honorable mentions. I mean, there's Halloween, there's The Howling, Christ, Phantasm.
Have you ever seen The Changeling from '79 with
Yes,
George C. Scott?
George C. Scott.
Probably my top.
Canadian film.
Yeah.
Do you remember, dude, when he goes up in that attic, in that wheelchair, goes,
Yeah.
that scared the shit out of me so bad, dude.
That is the scariest movie I had ever seen.
Hey.
Recently I bought a soundtrack. Even the soundtrack without the movie is scary.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Have you seen do you know the movie poster for The Changeling?
Oh yeah. I saw it in a movie theater.
It's like that. It's that wheelchair.
That
like,
wheelchair.
with a light shining on, like with cobwebs. Oh, dude, that's great.
Or the face in the bathtub. I mean, the pounding.
Dude,
when you throw away the ball, comes back and the ball keeps rolling back down the stairs. I mean, wow. To follow up that question, what about books? Your top 5 books?
Oh man. Okay. Now that's changed over the years.
I know.
Sure.
It changes for me as well. So.
Well, really, way up there, man, is The Godfather by Mario Puzo. There's a book called Galveston, which came out not too long ago by Nick Pizzolatto. He's the guy who created True Detective for HBO.
Oh, that was wicked, especially the first season.
The first season's one of my favorite. So that book Galveston came out before he ever had this HBO thing and whatnot. When you read Galveston, dude, because it's down south like True Detective season 1, and Galveston, Texas, and New Orleans and Louisiana, it has that vibe. It's really the underworld, the underbelly of society. Oh, dude, it's such a great book. And then I'm a huge Cormac McCarthy fan, so there's like a tie. If I could just blurt out, The Road, No Country for Old Men, a book called Suttree. Something about Cormac McCarthy is just so dark. And then there's a book by an author I love, a good friend of mine, a big bestseller dude named Peter Blauner. Hi, Peter. I love his work, man. I love all his books, but this book, The Intruder, is the first book I read by him. He's got several books out, and it just blew me away. I couldn't put it down, and it's so well written and just so gripping. Such a page turner,
If I can throw a book at you, Painted Birth by Jerzy Kosinski.
Okay.
Unreal. It's actually a required book to read at the university level.
I think I read that book.
Yeah. I read it in both
or
Polish
if I
and
haven't
English.
read, no. I think I have that book. I haven't read it.
Totally worth
So,
it.
yeah.
You will not put that book down.
Yeah, awesome. I always love great book referrals, and I love referring books to people too.
Same here.
And then going on, I would say like Stephen King's It, was, or I'm sorry, I love it, but no, The Stand is what I meant to say. Just a great book. And then there's just so many. I mean, that's a hard one, man. That's like, what are your favorite, bands or albums?
I know.
Top 5 books.
We could totally go off on that.
Is totally hard. If I could just mention this, there's an author named Paul Tremblay who just released a new book called The Cabin at the End of the World. And I can't put it down, dude. I'm almost done, and I started reading it yesterday, and it's freaking good. So check out Paul Tremblay. He's awesome.
Wow.
But anyway,
let's get back to Broken Hope.
All right.
Things were changing here.
Things are changing. So by the time this is our 5th album, Grotesque Blessings. Some backstory.
Probably the hardest one to find nowadays.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I have the rights to this album, so I've got like a ton of physical copies still from the original label, and this will be coming out on vinyl through a Greek label that's re-releasing a bunch of albums of ours on vinyl. So this will be back, but this album was done at Brian Griffin's studio again. It was done analog, and it came out in 1999 or so. And by the time this dropped, there were only 3 members of Broken Hope from the old, the first 4 albums. So it was Joe Thychek, Brian Griffin, and me, and then we had hired guns playing instruments on bass and on drums to write the album and record it. It's a super highly technical album in terms of musicianship. It is the most technical album we've ever done, and I'm talking like type of writing, way over the top. But right when this album came out, Joe Thychek quit the band. He called me on the phone and said, "I retire. I don't want to do death metal anymore or Broken Hope." And so we went our separate ways, and we toured for this album with a fill-in vocalist, a fill-in bass player, and a fill-in drummer. So it's just Brian Griffin and I. And we did a tour of North America, a tour of Europe, with our good friends Macabre from Chicago. Great tours, by the way, they were awesome. But it was after this album when I just wasn't feeling it. Just didn't. We kept having a revolving door, Brian and I, of different people filling in. And, looking back, it was just like, it didn't feel right. So it was right after that album we went on a hiatus for like 10 years.
What did you do during that time?
During that time, I wrote, before we announced we were gonna, it took a couple years because we were touring and doing stuff, but in 2002, we said, put the brakes on Broken Hope until we get a solid lineup that's permanent and really the chemistry's right and everything. We won't bring it back until we have all that stuff. And it took 10 years. And in that time, Brian Griffin, he went on to be this amazing sound man and amazing tour manager for tons of bands, until ultimately working with Lamb of God, I think almost exclusively. I think he might do other bands like Testament and stuff, but he forged a really amazing career for himself and went on to do that. Me personally, in the back of my mind, I was like, I'll do Broken Hope again someday, I think. And I've always been writing music, Mark, like since the demos. So
you've done things.
So our 6th album, which I'll show you in a second, during that time, 2003 to the next 7 years, I wrote music here and there that I would classify as Broken Hope. And those songs ended up on the 6th album, Moment of Disease. Mm-hmm. So I did that, but I also did I did this band called Lupara because I wasn't doing Broken Hope for the reasons I said, but I still wanted to jam and have a band, and so I did something that was sort of like guitar was like what I classify as death metal meets hardcore or something, and we did one album. We got signed, and we did a video for Headbangers Ball when it came back, when Jamie Josta was hosting it and everything. And that video actually got nominated for like Best Metal Video 2007 or something. And it was cool. It was fun to do, but it was a quick burn. It came and went quick, and that was it. And then the other thing outside of music, I'd always been writing. So I was publishing short stories in magazines and whatnot, and then I wrote and I was going to horror writing conventions all over the country and really focusing on that. And I ended up selling a short story to St. Martin's Press in this awesome anthology that went on to sell like over 60,000 copies and really put me on the map. And when that came out, it wasn't long after that, I got a publisher and an agent knocking on my door asking, hey, do you have any other works, novels or anything? And I just finished a novel called The Armageddon Chord. And so I sent that to this agent and this publisher who the agent worked with, and they were like, wow, we love this book. You need to work on it a little more, editing and revising wise, but let's get it shaped up, and we'd like to offer you a publishing deal. So I did that, got the deal, and then The Armageddon Chord came out in 2011, and it did really well. It was like number 4 on the Barnes & Noble bestseller list, which my mom was really proud of for a week. And then I got great reviews in Rolling Stone, Publishers Weekly, shit that just blew my mind, because that's stuff you dream of as a writer, I think most writers anyway. So it did really well, and then that publisher I was with, they went out of business, and I continued to sell short stories and whatnot, and recently I just got a new publishing deal. So I have a new book called Rabid Heart coming out in October, and that new publisher bought the rights to The Armageddon Chord and is re-releasing that in December. And then next year I've got two more books coming, and I write full time now. Since The Armageddon Chord in 2011 and launching my book career, and where been writing full time since then, Broken Hope creeped back into my life.
That's right. Like, you never gave up on that.
No.
But in the meantime, what happened is that we lost Joe.
Right. Yeah. I was just gonna go back a year. So Joe and I, we had talked for a while. We ended up reconnecting in 2009 and kept in touch, and we hung out a few times. And actually, 2008, 2009, we were hanging out more, talking, and he was in a biker club that on holidays and stuff tried to raise money for different needy organizations or whatever. So my wife and I would contribute gift cards or money to Joe's thing, and him and I got tighter and tighter, and it was nice. And then 2010, in January 2010, Joe committed suicide, and nobody knows why. I remember that day and everything that happened. I just couldn't believe it, because I just talked to him the week before, and I saw on my phone his number calling me early in the morning. I go, hey, what's up, Joe? And I was at work, and it was his girlfriend calling to tell me he died. So we had talked actually about doing Broken Hope again, right before he died.
No.
And I didn't. After he died, I didn't think I would ever do it again. But in 2012, we got approached, and
Speaking of Joe for a little bit longer.
Yeah, sure.
He was quite of a character. Care to say a few things describing Joe?
Yeah, man.
I mean, there's no one like him.
No, there's no one like him at all. This guy right here, for one, let's just talk death metal real quick. He set the standard for guttural, death metal vocals. You know, he was, even in our demo days, he had a mission to be the sickest vocalist possible in death metal and have that low guttural, you know. He was guttural and talking about being guttural before guttural became this catchphrase used in death metal and extreme death metal and, you know, porn grind and all that stuff. You know, he really was, I'd say, the godfather of guttural, you know. Some people might say Chris Barnes was too. They're close. Joe just, I think, was in a class by himself and really aimed to be the sickest. But Joe was a character. He
kind of kept him to himself too.
He was very, he was a couple of you know, like, he reminds me, the more I've learned of Jeff Hanneman, the more Jeff Hanneman and Joe Fajek were a lot alike. When Jeff Hanneman was off tour, he didn't like to have his phone on and deal with anyone. He wanted to do his own thing and not be bothered. He liked drinking beer. And he had Jeff Hanneman had a real fuck you attitude. I don't care what you think, whatever. Joe Fajek, the same way. He didn't care about being cool or being in a scene or trying to impress anybody. He never got caught up in drama or any bullshit. And he had a real fuck you attitude. He had a real punk attitude, really. And he kept to himself. He was a private guy, and he was super hilarious too. He had a sense of humor that, oh man, I've never met anyone like him. He made me laugh so hard till like I couldn't breathe and tears are rolling down my eyes. And it was this type of sense of humor that I'd say probably wasn't for anyone. You have to have something in you like I do to think, wow, this guy's like, sense of humor is way out there, but I always appreciated it. And there's no one like Joe, man. I've never met anyone else like him in my life, you know. So,
long live Joe, man. Long live Joe.
Yeah, long live Joe. And one thing, Mark, that I keep telling people that you know, Joe's not here. Ryan Stanek also passed away, you know, a couple years after Joe did, in his sleep. And I always like to tell people, so I'm like the remaining one of three guys that formed Broken Hope, right, 30 years ago in 1988. And like when I play our songs, I always have Joe and Ryan in my mind and in my heart. And I do think of them when I'm on stage playing, especially the old stuff. And then when it comes to our new albums, I still have those guys in my mind and my heart, you know, because it's this thing the three of us built together as teenagers. And I'm still alive, still walking the earth. I'm one of the founding fathers of Broken Hope, and I love the band we made. And it's been 30 years, I can't believe that either. So anyway.
So how did you
Here's
go about...
to Joe and Ryan. Love you guys.
How did you go about rebuilding the band? Especially with Joe being gone and bringing in a lot of new people to have the right feel.
One day, I got approached by this manager who said, hey, I really want to talk to you. I manage a lot of big bands and big metal bands. And I travel the world, I tour the world, and everywhere I see people wearing Broken Hope, like vintage shirts. People are always talking about Broken Hope. And it was pitched to me like, you know, Carcass came back, you know, they resurrected, these other bands came back, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm telling you, if you bring Broken Hope back, through my guidance, we'll do it the right way, and you know, it'll open your eyes. And I'm like, I want to do that, but I need the right lineup, and it's got to be tight, you know. So our drummer we have now, Mike Michek, him and I had already been jamming together. We're gonna do a grindcore band. That's me doing a blast beat. we were gonna do this grindcore band, and we did. It was called Earth Burner, and we figured that was gonna be the thing, and we were gonna do. And then when we got this offer, I'm like, okay, well, Mike, would you want to do Broken Hope? So Mike and I started playing Broken Hope songs. And we're like, you know what? This sounds pretty good. You know, like when you think of an album like Loathing, you know, the level of drumming Ryan Stanek had was really amazing, right? And we the old members of Broken Hope would always say, if we ever replace Ryan, drummers got to be able to play Loathing songs. If a drummer can do that, like Siamese Screams, this first song, you know they can play anything. So, and Mike could. So I knew Mike was going to be the drummer. And then at the time, Sean Glass was in the band, and him and I started reaching out. So we had Sean played bass, came back to playing bass like he did in the old days. And he had a guitar player that would do leads that he'd been jamming with, so that was already in there. But we needed a vocalist to really, you know, fill Joe's shoes. And you know, when I say fill Joe's shoes, it doesn't mean that anyone can fill Joe's shoes, because he can't. But needed someone that had a mindset to embrace Joe's style of guttural vocals and had that quality control level that Joe did. Joe had a high level of quality control. He didn't let anything lame get through. He worked really hard on his vocals. He, you know, just didn't cut corners or anything. So we wanted someone that was like Joe, with that attitude towards being a sick vocalist, and it could do Broken Hope's catalog justice, you know, just like Joe would. And we reached out to like 5 vocalists, one of which was Damian Lesky of Gorgasm, and that turned out to be the best thing we ever did, reaching out to him, because the other guys we talked to either weren't as serious. They were good, but they weren't serious about doing death metal or anything. Or some guys were serious but had like major criminal records, we found out, so they wouldn't be able to cross any border and tour. So Damien was perfect. He was close. He was a sick vocalist, and it just worked out.
And his background checked out as well.
His background checked out well. Yes, exactly. And what's funny about him, I was worried. He still has a Polish passport to this day. He doesn't have a U.S. passport. He has a Polish one, and he just keeps renewing it.
Interesting.
So, like he's been here since the '80s, but he doesn't. I guess he doesn't want to admit he's left yet. So.
Now, also at the time, there was a rumor that even Chris Barnes offered his vocals.
That's true. That's a fact, because Chris Barnes is a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey, Jer, if you know, bring Broken Hope back and you need a vocalist or anything, I'm in. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And then we just never crossed that bridge. You know,
Plus, I
think I reached out to Chris, and he was going on tour with that. Remember, he had the 2 guitar players, Matt and Rob from Chimera.
Yeah.
And he was doing that tour. Mm-hmm. So, if I remember right, he was busy touring and had those guys in the band, and I was trying to go full force with the Broken Hope lineup. So, he's like, the timing's not right, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to keep working on it, and here we are, you know. Mm-hmm. But that's true, yeah.
Plus, you needed someone who would be in the band whenever band needs him, you know. With Chris, there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, Chris has 6 feet, and he could be, you never know. So
I mean, Chris is great, but you know.
Yeah, Chris is a great friend. He's always been in my corner, like, no matter what, you know, so I appreciate that. Yeah. So, when we came back, when that manager approached us, and we had the lineup, we were doing this tour with Obituary. It was called Carnival of Death Tour, I think. So it was like Obituary, Broken Hope, Jungle Rot, Decrepit Birth, another Chicago band, and Crust. So we did that tour, but right when we were leaving to do the tour, our manager was like, you got label interest already since you announced you're back and doing this tour. And we're like, who is it? Like Century Media is really interested. And at the time, Robert Camp, the owner of Century Media, was still there. He since sold the company to Sony and whatnot, but he was like interested. So he signed Broken Hope while we were doing the Obituary tour. He signed us in Hollywood at right at the Rainbow on the Sunset Strip. He didn't want to hear demos or nothing. He's like, fucking Broken Hope, I love you guys. You're back, and I want you on Century Media. So then we did this album. It came out in 2013. And the day it came out, we kicked off a world tour. And we did like North America, Europe, Deicide, Immolation, a bunch of other festivals and tours, and really great. And it was a great comeback album, after being
How do people react to the new lineup, especially the new vocalist? Because that's a big change, when it comes to the face of the band.
It depends who you talk to.
True.
There's...
you're always going to have both sides.
Yeah. There's people close to Joe who are really buttsore that, Broken Hope is being an active band with a new vocalist, but you know what? It's my band. I started it with Joe and Ryan, and Joe is dead. And I can't change that. He's dead and I'm still alive. So unfortunately some people can't see past that, so the attitude's like, no Joe, no Broken Hope. People forget he quit the band after Grotesque Blessings was released, and we went on and toured for years, after that, for at least 3 years, and nobody seemed to mind back then, but I think it's just the gravity of Joe being gone that some people have a hard time with that. So you got people like that who have an attitude and just can't envision it. So, and I get it, if Led Zeppelin came back and it was just Jimmy Page and Robert Plant died, John Bonham's dead, but some people might be like, well, that's not Led Zeppelin. Whatever. So, but Jimmy Page, still a founding member. So, it depends who you talk to. Most of the people we meet, fans and everything, love the new lineup. We've been doing We've been doing it since 2012. Everybody in the band has a great deal of respect for our legacy. You know what I mean? Like Damien, Mike, and Matt and Diego are really vocal about respecting Joe and respecting Ryan's legacy. And that's a part of keeping Broken Hope alive too, is if I wasn't doing Broken Hope, no one's playing these songs, but we're active and we're alive, and I'm respecting and remembering their legacies by continuing on. There's no Broken Hope. There wouldn't have been a Broken Hope without Joe and Ryan, even down to the name Broken Hope that we all, voted on when I wrote it on a list of band names we were trying to think of. You know what I mean? So, so there's that. But to your point, yeah, I think it works. We're going on 6 years now of being completely active. We've released 2 studio albums, our first ever live album, 2 live concert DVDs, and we're continuing to tour. And we're asked to tour and appear at festivals, and we're paid for it because people obviously think we're relevant, and that's a good feeling, that people love what we're doing, and to some extent are grateful that we're here. And Broken Hope, people know Broken Hope is my baby. and a lot of people were a part of making Broken Hope what Broken Hope is now, and I never forget that, and I'll always acknowledge everybody that was part of this band, and I'm just glad to be here. And again, let's state the fact that it's been 30 years, dude. Mm-hmm. Since I was a little teenager, formed this band. It's, you know, kind of weird, you know, whatever. It's cool, but
now, if Omen of Disease was reintroduce the band to the old fans and new fans, the next album really showed a lot of growth as well.
Yeah.
Can you
So
talk about
this album, Mutilated and Assimilated. Again, another.
I always want to call it Mutated.
Yeah, right. Hey, yeah.
Because the band did mutate.
Right. And that creature looks mutated for sure. The Thing. Same artist, by the way, Wes Ben Scoter, who did Loathing and Repulsive Conception art. He did this. This album I'm really proud of because it's the lineup. The lineup I have now, we've had for 4 years. So I'm talking. Aside from Damien and Mike have been with me since technically 2011, and Diego on bass, Matt Schlatka on lead guitar. When they joined, they've been in the band already 4 years. So, and we've done so many tours, and we did the live album, and we did this album together. And I really think everybody kicked in so much over the last 4 years as brothers and as professionals and chemistry, really. Like, that really made for this album to be so awesome because everybody put in 100% rather than, you know, one or two people trying to do everything, which is kind of how it was for years in the band, you know.
Where do you feel it's going to go from now?
Well, this year, so that this album's been out just over a year, and we're doing this interview in Chicagoland. We're playing across the street at Chicago Domination Festival. So after this fest, we leave for Europe for a month, and we're doing it's part festival tour, part headline tour, and then opening at some for club dates like for Misery Index and Origin and stuff. So after that, this is the plan. We get home at the end of August, and everybody's kind of going their own way for a while. For example, I'll explain. Mike Michak drums for a Chicago band called Atlas Moth. Mm-hmm. So they're going on tour because they have a new album out. So they're going to be touring the rest of the year. They're opening for Paradise Lost in North America, which is great. And then Damien Lesky, as soon as we get back from the Broken Hope Euro tour, he's home for just a little bit, and he's flying back to Europe to do a Gorgasm tour. And then Diego Soria, our bass player, he's been recruited by Cattle Decapitation to play bass. So he's like going to Japan, and then he's coming back and doing North American tour, and on and on. So, and then Matt Schlatka, he's a full-time guitar teacher. That's what he does for a living. So he's coming back, he'll be teaching, and he's got a couple side projects he does. He plays jazz guitar, and he's got, I think, a music project with his girlfriend, who's an amazing violinist, and he's got some other projects in the works. So all these guys are off doing stuff. I have deadlines with, like I said, I got like 2 new books next year that are planning on coming out, but I have a ton of work I got to do. Plus, with the actual release of a novel in October, I'm working on promoting that and doing some appearances and stuff. So I'll be doing the book thing, and behind the scenes I'll be writing new Broken Hope music and lyrics. With all of that, we'll probably in 2019 come together and start writing a new album. But it's going to be a while till like Broken Hope does any more shows. or anything for some time. So
Finally, when you look back at the 30 years, all these records, do you personally feel fulfilled?
yeah, I do. I've had a love-hate relationship with the band, like over always. Because sometimes, you know, you get burned out, you know, like whether, you know, it's music business stuff.
Oh yeah.
Our butting heads and whatnot. With this lineup, like, we don't really butt heads. We all really, it's like a dream lineup. Everyone is mature. Everybody enjoys being in the band. We're all genuine friends. There's no egos or anything. But that said, you know, there's still conflicts with schedules or what people want to do and stuff, and that's really no big deal. But on a positive note, I still love Broken Hope, and it's the writing of music on guitar and lyrics that are fulfilling to me and a passion. It's my art, just like writing a book is my art, or anyone's art. You know, it fulfills me. It's my passion, and I love doing it. And when I look back to 1988, when I was a teenager with Joe and Ryan, I've had many dreams come true that I would have, as a teenager, would have thought couldn't believe, like, it would happen. I always tell people when some crazy, amazing thing happens that Broken Hope is done, or something associates with Broken Hope on some crazy level, I always say, oh, the teenager inside me is flipping out right now, you know, because I never forget where I come from, ever. I always remember being a teenager. So to have, you know, 7 studio albums and a live album and concert DVDs, that already is more than I ever dreamed of. And I do feel fulfilled. I feel like I really did something with Broken Hope, and I did something with my life. I didn't just sit around, you know, I'm not a negative Nelly. I never have been. I don't listen to naysayers. People, when I was a teenager, I'd hear people saying, you'll never do that with your band, you'll never succeed, blah, 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 because the naysayers have no ambition, they're lazy, and they're friggin' negative. So I'd always have blinders on, like, fuck you, I'm going to reach for the stars, and I'm going to take things as far as I can, because this is what I love to do, and as far as I know, you only live once. So I always had that attitude as a teenager. I'm going to I'm going to try to do what I want to do in life, and that's where I feel fulfilled with Broken Hope, because when I get home from tour, I'll be 48 years old, you know, so I can, you know, it's one of those things where, all right, I'm 48, looking back at all this Broken Hope things, there are things Broken Hope accomplished, and I definitely take a step back and go, you know what? Good job, man. Stuck to your guns, and look what you've done. And, you know, hey, we're still a little itty bitty death metal band from the Chicago burbs, but for whatever it's worth, you know, fuck, man. People know us worldwide, and we're still doing stuff, and we're still goddamn brutal as hell. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.